Hi there, everyone. CinePresto here, once again with Greg Weisman.
Hey.
Happy to have you on the show again in another one of your offices.
Yeah.
In your many offices over the years and everything. Here to answer some quick fan questions about Young Justice and everything, and about prospects for a season 3 and everything. I'm not going to go too much into some of the other stuff that's been mentioned in other articles, but we want to have a chance to actually answer some of the Young Justice protest questions that we've had posed on the page over the last few days. So, without further ado, I do have some ones just based on previous seasons. I'm not going to ask anything about potential season 3, since, you know, the chances of that.
All be spoilers, and I don't give out spoilers.
Yep, as we know famously.
Right.
So, the first question that we do have is, oh wait, this one's already kind of spoiler, already getting into it. So, this one's a kind of already starting off right off the bat, so it's going to be a little bit of a specific question. And this one is in regards to Dick Grayson's character. And that is something that's set up in season 1 that carries on into season 2 about him having that conversation. I forget what the episode title is, but he's having a conversation with Black Canary after the traumatic incident with Miss Martian and everything.
Yeah, disordered.
Yeah, and they're talking about how Dick Grayson doesn't want to actually become Batman, and how that's something he actually fears and everything. However, in season 2, as that season progresses, we kind of see Nightwing go into start to use some of the tactics that would be more attributed to Batman. Can you tell me a little bit how you guys developed that arc, and, you know, if that was something that was very intentionally laid out? And yeah.
Well, it was, definitely intentional. As we saw in the episode where the Justice League was considering new members, that Batman didn't want Robin to grow up to be like him, and we see, as you mentioned, that Robin realizes somewhat belatedly that he doesn't want to grow up to be like Batman. But what we also showed, I hope, throughout season 1 and certainly in season 2, is that nevertheless Dick Grayson is a natural born leader. He's actually very good at it. He's good at it in Failsafe. Aqualad says this is the role you're born to take, and he's good at being a leader in season 2 when he has to be. Doesn't mean he likes it. And so you see, as soon as Calder comes back at the end of season 2, Dick is, even before what happened to Wally and before Dick takes his leave of absence, Dick is more than willing to turn over the reins to someone else. Because being good at it and enjoying it, those are two very different things.
Mm-hmm. So he's a bit more of an unwilling leader, and especially the events of the season finale really play into his final decision to leave. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, he's taking a leave of absence. We're not saying one way or another whether he comes back or not, but clearly he was burnt, and the loss of his best friend was tremendously painful. But that wasn't about leading, because by that time he'd already turned over leadership back to Aqualad. That was about whether he was going to keep doing this at all. And at the time he felt that he'd come back. He just needed some time off. But we'll have to see if we get a season 3 to find out whether or not what he did do.
Oh boy, the flux. Okay then, my next question for you is, do you happen to have a favorite character on the show? Who would that be?
I don't, actually. It's akin to sort of saying which of your kids is your favorite. And so my mind doesn't really work that way. I don't rank things. People are always asking me, what are your 3 favorite movies? Or what are your 5 favorite, whatever. And occasionally I have that feeling. I mean, my overall favorite DC Comics character is Black Canary. Mm-hmm. And so I love, obviously, Black Canary on the show, but I love all the characters on the show, obviously starting with our original 6 leads, but I love Zatanna, I love Rocket. I had a great time writing for all the various versions of Speedy, Red Arrow, Arsenal, Guardian. I know my favorite character to write, just because he was a kick to write the dialogue for, was G. Gordon Godfrey, just because writing his dialogue was hilarious. And I knew that whatever I wrote, Tim Curry would make it incredible. So that was, from a standpoint of just actual writing, that was the most fun to write. But I wouldn't say G. Gordon's my favorite character, and it's hard for me to just sort of single one out, because there's stuff I love about all of them. I mean, I think what we did with Aqualad, I think if we had tried to convince people before the show came off the air that Aqualad was going to be this kick-ass character, they would have gone, yeah, right, sure he is. Aqualad, uh-huh.
Yeah.
But he is, and I think Artemis and Miss Martian and Superboy and Kid Flash and all the season 2 characters as well. Virgil's a lot of fun. Blue Beetle's a ton of fun. I had fun with Lagoon Boy, and Wonder Girl and Batgirl were great. So really, I can't just sort of pull one out and say, oh, that's my favorite.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And the fact of the matter, you're mentioning, you had a lot of these more obscure characters that came out of that. You guys really, aside from Robin and perhaps Kid Flash, you had characters that, were either created for the show or just like really evolved into.
There weren't a ton of characters created for the show.
Yeah.
In fact, the only two that immediately come to mind are the Terror Twins. Most others were all brought. I mean, some were certainly obscure. I mean, Professor Oho's pretty obscure. And I do think we were able to sort of take some characters from an earlier era that were maybe a little thought of in a modern context as being a little goofy, like Sportsmaster.
Yeah.
And sort of found a way to make them cool again.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, we had a really specific need in the episode Terrors, so we created the Terror Twins for that episode. But for the most part, I think almost all our characters were from the comics, obscure or otherwise, and sometimes adapted certainly, but still from the comics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great.
Even minor, tiny characters like the police detective in the episode Secrets was Jim Daniels. He was a character from the comics. We made a real effort whenever possible to, I had John Wells doing research for me on occasion. He's great, and John helped me find some obscure characters
to fit the roles that you needed.
To fit what we needed. And yeah, I know the Terror Twins we created, and you can make an argument that we created Aqualad, though obviously he's based on the Aqualad that preceded us, and on Cal Durham and on Black Manta and everything else. But for the most part, we tried to go to the source.
It's great to have, at the core of it stays true, as you usually say, and then, after that, the minor changes really just are to support the story and everything. So, yeah, I really love that foundation of storytelling that you kind of build up in the show and everything.
Thank you.
That being said, which of the shows that you actually had a part in did you find the most difficult to write?
Well, I mean, I had a part in all of them. If you're talking about which ones I personally scripted, I don't know which one was most difficult. I mean, the one that was most fun for me was probably Misplaced, and it was certainly a challenge because we basically told a bit of a story, then started over and told it again, and from a different point of view, and we were really building toward one scene that really fascinated me, which was the idea of Batman and Aqualad having a conversation when they were in different dimensions, and the idea that Captain Marvel and Billy Batson were basically crossing back and forth to give the message, so that it created this impression that Batman and Aqualad were talking, and that visual, that idea of the split screen, but then having this conversation just fascinated me, and that's what I wanted to build to ultimately. And that episode's a lot of fun for me because there's comedy in it and a little bit of romance, and but it ends up being pretty tragic.
Yeah.
And then another one that was a challenge to write was probably Summit, episode 219, because we sort of I set the challenge for myself that other than a little bit of the tag, the entire episode from teaser all the way through the bulk of Act 3 was all going to take place in real time in one location. And that can be difficult. You can't cut away. Is it going to be static? Is it going to be boring? I don't mean static, the character.
Yeah.
Will it be dull? Will it feel like claustrophobic, or or can we play this all out in this one cenote cave and maintain the drama and maintain the tension over basically 20 minutes of real time? And I think we succeeded. At least I'm satisfied with it.
Yeah, I really think that you did a great job of just building the drama, and it all takes place in just that, cave and everything.
Right.
Everything builds to a really spectacular climax in that, and then leads perfectly into the next episode of season 2 and everything.
Which is huge, so.
Yeah.
So it was nice to have something really tight and really contained, because we're about to go into something really huge and globe spanning and everything.
So it can't be a little slow, because of the next episode it definitely has to be fast paced, right?
Yeah, there's a ton to stuff into the final episode of season 2.
Mm-hmm. So which one of these episodes did you enjoy writing the most? And what is your personal favorite?
Well, we just sort of covered that. I mean, my personal
Yeah.
favorite is probably Misplaced. But again, I like, we did 46 episodes, and I did, 21 plus comic books, and I'm proud of all of them. So, but Misplaced, I think, is probably my favorite.
Okay, then. In your opinion, what really helped to define each of these characters? As we spoke about earlier, it's just that some of them were pulled from more obscure places and everything, and some of the characters were different from their comic incarnations. I mean,
well, to me, what we tried to do is get down to the core of each character, and the core truths of each character. So, yeah, I mean, our Superboy, for example, doesn't have the same personality as the comic book Superboy, but it was tough for me to buy into the comic book Superboy emerging from a pod with that personality. It didn't make a hell of a lot of sense to Brennan and myself that he would start out with that kind of attitude, that let alone that costume. And so we felt that, he'd be well educated, but he'd have no experience with human interaction, so that some of that attitude and smarm and stuff that's part of the comic book version, which is fun on some levels, didn't make a lot of sense to us. And so we wanted a character that was much more raw, but we still felt we were going to the core of who that character was, a character who was created to replace Superman. What would he be like, and if that was the life goals programmed into him. For Artemis, the idea of the child of two villains, or Miss Martian, a shapeshifter who's hiding things. The idea that, Batman had forbidden Robin from revealing a secret identity.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that Robin was keeping the secret from Batman, that he had in fact revealed his secret identity to Kid Flash. We wanted a lot of secrets, a lot of lies in the show, because fundamentally, we were first and foremost a spy show, and second, a show about teenagers, and a distant third, we were a show about superheroes. So, with that spy theme in mind, the idea of secrets, the idea of lies was one of the major themes running through, and would continue to run through the entire series.
Yeah. And that's something I actually thought about too. This is more of a spy show. They're assigned to their mission of the week, but it all builds into, a grander plot and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's all big, and God knows there are superhero tropes throughout it, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't deny it because I wouldn't want to deny it, but thematically and structurally, we structured the show like a spy show with mysteries and reveals, and a lot of cat and mouse play between heroes and villains, and between heroes, and those are the hallmarks of a spy show, not of a sort of strict action superhero show.
Yeah.
And that idea of doing it as a spy show, was Brandon Vietti's sort of brilliant notion that really created separation from us from the shows that had immediately preceded us, like Justice League Unlimited, and Teen Titans. And it's not that those shows didn't have those elements in them, because they definitely did, but that was going to be what our show was about. Again, I'm not being critical of those other shows. I think they're fantastic, but we were very intimidated by stepping into the shadow of those three shows, and wanted to make sure that what we were doing was going to in some way feel fresh and different, and not just feel like we were doing a watered down version of Justice League Unlimited or a more serious version of Teen Titans or anything like that.
Yeah. So it ended up becoming this very different thing, which ended up being, the fantastic 2 seasons that we do have, just about these teenagers having to deal with, the secret plots and everything, especially with season 2, which is more plot driven.
So, that was the idea, and I think we're very happy with how it turned out. It seems that the fans are pretty happy too.
Yeah. definitely. This one comes from a fan who's curious about how did Jesse McCartney get the role of Robin in Young Justice?
He auditioned, and he was great, so we cast him. It's not a complicated story. No, I mean, it's really that simple. Jesse was fantastic, and so he got the part.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no story there. He's just really good.
Is that the only one that he auditioned for? Or?
I can't remember. I think so. I don't know. I don't remember him auditioning for Kid Flash. Obviously, he wouldn't have auditioned for Kelder or the girls. And I'm positive he didn't audition for Superboy or Superman. Because we only auditioned 7 parts. Everything else we cast in season 1. The only parts we auditioned were 7. Obviously, Robin, Kid Flash, Miss Martian, Artemis, Aqualad, and then any actor who wanted to audition for Superboy also had to audition for Superman, because for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
We needed the same actor to be able to play both, and that was the challenge, is find an actor. And of course, Nolan North is brilliant at it, who can play both with basically the same voice, and yet you never have any doubt which one you're hearing at any given moment, and yet not do that by changing your voice and making one sound old and one sound young. Because the difference between a 16-year-old kid and a, who's already clearly past puberty, and a 27 or 8-year-old guy is not going to be hugely dramatic in anything except personality, when it's basically the same genetic thing. So I remember if Jesse auditioned for Superboy and Superman, and so I know he didn't. But he might have also auditioned for Kid Flash. I really just don't remember.
Oh, okay.
But he definitely auditioned for Robin, and he was great.
Yeah. And then everyone's still waiting for the musical episode to happen. So.
Yeah, it's tough. I'd love to do that. We have some great singers on our show, and it's always fun, but it's tough, because particularly for our show, because it's tough to figure out a way to make it play. I mean, I remember when I did Gargoyles, we were dying to do a musical episode because, again, I had some tremendous singers in the cast. And I really wanted to do a musical episode, and I just couldn't figure out how to make it work. And then, of course, after that, Joss Whedon did his Buffy the Musical, and I'm like, I could totally have done that, If he hadn't taken that idea first, I could totally have had Puck cast a spell on everybody. And I guess in theory I could have Clarion or someone cast a spell that has everyone singing for an episode. But A, it just feels like, okay, that's so been done. Mm-hmm. And B, it's still with the tone of our show. It's like even Gargoyles has a lighter, goofier, or at least more varied tone than Young Justice. Young Justice is so grounded. It's sort of tough to play. I'd still love to do it. And Brennan and I have talked about it on and off, although I don't think ever seriously. We need to find that idea that felt A, fresh, and B, still felt like it was our show and wasn't us being indulgent and just trying to squeeze a musical into it. I mean, I love what they did on Buffy. I love what they did on Brave and the Bold with that musical episode. But it would be tough for us to figure it out. That is, we haven't been able to.
Mm. But I mean, I don't have any doubt that the fans would just love it. It's just complete,
yeah, they might love
complete
it,
fan service, though.
They might love it, but at the same time, I think there'd be a moment where we're like, well, that was fun, but yeah, I really shouldn't have done that. and I think, and we want to, if we were to do it, we'd have to find a reason to do it that sort of justified it and didn't just feel like it. Like all it was fan service or a creator indulgence.
Yeah, like here it is. You better take it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so...
We did do, just this last weekend in Minneapolis, we did a radio play, which was just for fun. It was Gargoyles meets the Spectacular Spider-Man meets Young Justice, and we cast it. It was a radio play I wrote just in a few days, so it's just a silly piece of fluff, really, but there's a story to it, and we cast it from among the fans and rehearsed it and performed it all in one day. And we also threw in some Black Man and Celebrity Hot Tub, so there's some singing in that turned out really great. even though when we walked in the door we had lyrics but no music, so we had to figure that out on the fly. But it still turned out really good.
Yeah. Those radio plays are very entertaining every time.
Yeah.
Can we find some of those on your website, by the way?
Not on my website, which is askgregweisman.com, but there are links to YouTube videos, because all the first two radio plays that I did like that are on YouTube. And the third one was taped that day, so I would think that, I don't know if it's up yet. In fact, it's probably not. Someone would have told me if it was, but I'm sure in the next month or so the third one will be up on YouTube as well, I would think, because they did it before, so I'm sure they'll do it again.
Okay. Yeah. It's something for the fans to look forward to if they want a little more Young Justice.
Yeah, it's just fun. I mean, again, not to be taken too seriously. We're not trying to imply that a real crossover is going on, but it's a lark, you know.
So in this universe, Superman, well, in the comics, Superman's known for having hyperintelligence or some sort of Kryptonian, right?
No.
Not in Young Justice?
No.
Okay.
I mean, he's not a dumb guy, but he's got no hyperintelligence.
He's not smarter than Batman then? Oh, that's a...
Well, I mean, I'm not going to sit there and measure their IQs or anything like that. Depends how you define smarts too, but I guess the short answer is no. I'm not saying Batman's smarter than him either. I'm just saying that, Batman studies certain things and Superman's focused on other things. But, it's not like one of our scientist characters, like who you think of as sort of the super genius, like Ray Palmer or the Brain, or the Ultra Humanite or something like that. I don't think of them as being either Batman or Superman as being super geniuses, because to me that takes away from who they are as characters.
Mm-hmm.
If both of them are super geniuses and know everything and can figure everything out, I think Batman's studied things that will help him as a detective and will help him in his work, but I don't think of him as a scientist. I think he uses the scientific method, but that's a different thing than actually being some kind of super genius, and I don't think Superman's a super genius either. Again, bright guy, not dumb, but not some kind of hyper-intelligent thing. That doesn't fly for me.
I think that was the best answer you could possibly give him for a very loaded question.
I didn't know it was loaded. Just,
fans get it. So the final question is, how can fans get more involved to bring the show back? And I'll probably ask you again.
Well, I'll talk directly to Cameron for this one. So in order to understand how to bring Young Justice back, what really is key to that is understanding why it went away in the first place. I've heard a lot of rumors on the internet, all sorts of just baloney about too many girls watching or Cartoon Network canceling or all sorts of things, and none of that's true. I'm not saying that there aren't little things that influenced it, but by and large, the biggest thing is obvious, and that is from day one, the budget for our show was paid for by the toy company on the anticipation of toy sales coming in. Toy sales coming in both to the toy company Mattel and to Warner Brothers Television Animation, which was producing the show, and to DC Comics, whose characters we were using in the show. So once you understand that that's what paid for the show in the first place, then it's pretty clear why it went away. The toy line failed and was canceled. Now, we could talk for hours about why it failed and whose fault it is, and I don't care. I just don't care. It's completely immaterial, and it's distracting to the main point. The main point is that the toy line was canceled. Mattel stopped putting money out for the show. No money, no show. And it's no more complicated than that. Without money, we can't produce the show, because the show costs money to produce. And I know that sounds dead obvious, and yet I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with very well-meaning fans who sometimes almost refuse to acknowledge that fact, that it takes money to produce a show. They think that a big company like Time Warner must have unlimited resources to produce whatever the hell they want, and I suppose on one level they kind of do. I mean, they're not actually unlimited, there are limitations, but the fact of the matter is these companies have stockholders, and these stockholders want to see profits, so they need to have a way to make profit on the show and to pay for the show. So when you think about how would we bring it back, the answer to that question isn't, well, tell them what a great idea you have for season 3. They know what the idea for season 3 is. There's no one at Warner Brothers Animation who's sitting there going, we do not want to make this show. They all want to make the show. I've had that conversation. The question becomes, how do you pay for it? So here are some really pragmatic ways that the fans can do to help demonstrate to Warner Brothers that they can pay for the show. The first way, most obvious, is to binge watch the show over and over again on Netflix. Season 2 of Young Justice premiered on Netflix on February 1st, and since then has done very well. So is season 1. I don't know exact numbers because I don't work for Netflix, but it's clear it's doing well because it's trended on Netflix on and off ever since. Also, people have contacted Netflix customer service, and Netflix customer service reps have said that Netflix is in talks with Warner Brothers. Now, I don't know how real that is. I don't work for Netflix, and I don't even work for Warner Brothers. We're recording this interview from my office at Nickelodeon. So I don't have inside information, but what I have is pragmatic information about how the business works, how the industry functions. And so, if we continue to binge watch the show, if fans binge watch the show, if fans introduce new people to the show so we make new fans, and those numbers on Netflix stay high, it continues to trend, then that'll make Netflix really interested in going to Warner Brothers and saying, hey, what about a season 3? Or even just make Warner Brothers go, wow, this show's really popular for streaming. If it's not Netflix, maybe it's someplace else. So binge watching the show on Netflix is really helpful. Introducing new friends to binge watch it is very helpful. Heck, at this point, you can turn it on and leave the room for all I care. What we're looking for is getting those numbers up and keeping them up. And that's important to understand too. This is a marathon, not a sprint. You know, there was a point on Valentine's Day last February where someone online, very well-meaning, said, let's everybody binge watch it together on Valentine's Day. And I'm like, sure, sounds fun. And all these people binge watched on Valentine's Day. And then the next day, people were tweeting me, so did we win? Did we get it? Is there a season 3? I'm like, wait a minute, who said Valentine's Day was important? That was just a fun thing to do, you know? It wasn't like suddenly that was going to be the answer. Like if we all did it one day, that would be enough. No, this is a marathon. We've got to keep those numbers up on an ongoing basis until or unless they say to us, either it's not going to happen or it is going to happen. And we haven't heard either. But we have heard from customer service that they're at least talking. I don't know what that means. I don't know if they're negotiating. I don't know if they're just having a conversation casually. I don't even know for sure if the customer service reps know. But it sounds like they're having a conversation, and that's a positive. Another thing you can do is buy the episodes on iTunes. Again, that puts money in Warner Brothers' pockets, and Warner Brothers goes, oh, hey, we're making money on this show again, maybe we should make more. Another thing you can do is buy the episodes on Blu-ray or DVD. Then Warner Brothers Home Entertainment will go to Warner Brothers Animation and say, wow, we're making a lot of money on Young Justice DVDs and Blu-rays. How about you make some more? Or another thing that would really be helpful is to buy our companion comics on Comixology or iTunes. Because again, that puts money right into the pockets of DC Comics, which is another division of Time Warner. And DC goes to Warner Brothers and says, hey, we're making a lot of money on Young Justice. How about we make more? And that's the idea. In other words, this is really a financial question. It's not a creative question. It's not any other kind of question except financial. And so those are the ways to do it. People talk to me about petitions, but we've had tons of petitions. And the truth is, petitions are really nice for the fans because it creates a community for them. And so I've got nothing against petitions, but they do nothing in terms of actually bringing back season 3. Even in terms of hashtags, I keep seeing the hashtag Renew Young Justice. And I'm like, who's that for? Who's that hashtag for? Again, it creates community, but the only people who are going to check out that hashtag are other fans. That hashtag isn't helpful to me. It's not bad, I got no objection to it, but it's not actually helpful. And in a tweet, where you've got a limited number of characters, I wouldn't waste the space on Renew Young Justice or Young Justice Season 3 hashtags. The hashtags I favor are the ones that are calls to action. So the hashtags I favor, the 3 in particular, are hashtag keep binging YJ, because that tells the fan exactly what we need them to do. Hashtag buy YJ Blu-rays DVDs. Hashtag buy YJ comics on Comixology. Because all those hashtags are calls to action that tell the fan, tell the viewer what they can do to help. And that's what's key. Because again, it's not, people contact me and go, make season 3, and I'm like, I'd love to, but it's not up to me. And the funny thing is that for once it really is up to the fans, not to any individual fan, but to the mass of fans. If they all work together and they all do these things, they can really make it happen. I mean, look, if we can have Fuller House, maybe we can have a 3rd season of Young Justice, because it's doing well on Netflix, that much is clear. And if it's doing well on Netflix, then maybe they'll be willing to make more. Now, people have asked me, am I blowing smoke? Is this real? And the answer is, look, I'm not blowing smoke. I honestly, legitimately feel that these methods are pragmatic ways for us to get the show back. But I don't want to make false promises. I don't know. I don't have any inside information. Like I said, I don't work at Warner Brothers anymore, and it's not like Warner Brothers is calling Nickelodeon and saying, hey, you want to know what's going on over at our studio? They don't do that. So I'm not on the inside, but I do know how the business works. This is how it works, and this is what we can do to get the show back. And that's what I keep trying to keep people focused on, because anything else I think is a distraction. People looking to place blame for why it went off the air, that's a distraction. It doesn't matter. It's water under the bridge. We want it back. That's what's key, and these are real pragmatic ways to help us get it back. But it's got to be thought of in terms of the long haul, not in terms of, oh, look, if I watch the episodes tomorrow night, is that enough? There's no way for me to know what's going to be the one episode viewing that puts it over the top, or if there is such a thing. But if we all do it and we introduce more fans, more people to the show, and we keep Netflix, we keep YJ trending on Netflix, then I do think that'll really make a difference.